What is up, good people of the world? So I'm super excited to be working back on this how to write a fantasy main theme project. Sorry for the delay. I was getting all my audio stuff working out, but we should be good to go now. I think as long as I make these episodes no longer than 30 minutes, we're not going to run into any issues. Also, let me know in the comments, is my video on the side too big, too small? Do you want it to be larger? Do you want it to not be there at all so you can see the full screen? The nice thing about this new software that I'm using is I can actually see my video there. I can see myself, and so I don't think that there will be an issue of, it obfuscating something that I'm trying to demonstrate on the screen because I can't see it if you can't see it. So it should be fine. In any case, let's remind ourselves what we came up with, and let me make sure to turn myself. I'm on Do Not Disturb. Okay, great. And I also noticed some of you said that my voice wasn't loud enough, so I tried to fix that a little bit. But I'll also try to not speak so much when the music is playing. If I let it play, I'll let it play, and I'll not get in the way of that. But as always, I always want to make sure to make these videos as watchable and improve them as much as possible. So let me know if you have if anything bothers you. I also know that I instinctively move the page around, and I actually, one of the reasons that I got this. I can't show you because it'll move my keyboard, but I got a rollerball mouse. I was hoping that that would make it more difficult for me to move things around, but I know that bothers you. I just did it again. I know that bothers some of you, but in any case, some habits are more difficult to break than others. But so let's listen to what we came up with and remind ourselves. And I think it's actually probably good that I took a little break from this and I'm coming back to it because I'll have a fresh perspective. Okay, so I really like that harmonic change at the end. That was one of those types of things. I get in these weird moods where I'm working on something and something sounds really cool to me in the moment, and I'll come back and be like, it's a little too weird. But actually, I really like that. We definitely need to add a lot more rhythmic vitality because it seems like the rhythmic pulsation drops out a little bit, and the degree to which I don't want to say ostinati, but what's the word that I'm looking for? Vamps? It's not really the right word, but rhythmic pulses, instruments that are playing rhythmic pulses. The higher they are, the more they appear to be decoration and not sort of holding the cake together. And so even though I do feel like we keep this eighth note motion going, I think I want to have something underneath. I think there is room. It's not that complicated. The bass line is simple. There's a lot of space, and the harmony is very, very simple in the background. And these flutes and clarinets are just playing mostly repeated notes. And so I think there's room to continue this tremolo line, and I think that'll help give it some continuity because a general rule of thumb is I think you want approximately half of the things to stay the same in a new section and half of the things to be different. If they all stay the same, it's boring, and if they all change, then it's just too novel and doesn't seem to be right. I still feel like the entrance, measure 5, is too sudden. That may be something where it won't be the case when I'm sampling, but since I came back to it with fresh ears and I still find that to be an issue, I'm just going to try a couple more things, and maybe I'll end up being okay with it, but I just have to try. I have to see whether or not there's something that I could do to help build up without spoiling it that moment to 5. So bear with me while we brainstorm some things. So one thing that I could do, I'm going to try this, just a really soft, brass creeping in to let us into the new section, not spoiling the melody, not so the melody still has impact when it comes in, but just so that it doesn't go from like really empty and open to suddenly full and rich, because there's a fine line between it's nice it's a relief to our ears, and it's a nice unexpected contrast. But too much, and there's a discontinuity between those two textures. Okay, so I love Sibelius, but there's so many issues. Like, for example, like, you know, there should be an option to just extrapolate downward. There is, but it goes. It's so dumb. It goes below. Like if the line is on trombone 1, and I tell it to extrapolate downwards, it'll put the first line on trombone 2 and then bass trombone and then tuba. It's like, who would ever use that? You'd want to have the first line be on the one that you have selected. I guess I could, like, well, actually, you know what? Let me try that since we're here. Let me put this on trumpet and then see if I can just below source staff. Yeah, see, that works. So I guess I could just bite the bullet and do that. I still think that's kind of dumb. Okay, so we have nice. I don't think we'll articulate this, but I will articulate that. And we'll do a triple P, which is not an issue. You got to be careful going in really quiet dynamic levels with brass instruments in extreme registers, because it's really difficult for them to play super softly. There are some instruments that are really good, and to some extent it depends upon, like, not to get into a conversation about, you know, dynamic levels, but like clarinets are one of the few instruments, and to some extent saxophones, although not in really low notes, but clarinets especially, clarinets can just creep in from nothing, from absolutely, in the definitive technical definition of the word, nothing. And it's a wonderful sound. And there are some good examples of this, like the Pines of Rome, the third movement, where that you have that lovely clarinet. And there's actually some really lovely, oh gosh, I'm going to get into a rabbit trail here, but that third movement of Pines of Rome has some wonderful harmony and some bitonality, and I think it's one. The Pines of Rome is one of those pieces that the kind of classical snobs are like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just brilliantly orchestrated, kind of accessible film music, and there's also a kind of discussion that's often had in esoteric music theory and music history circles that there's something artistically lesser about programmatic music as opposed to absolute music. Absolute music is music that doesn't have any kind of like external non-musical connotation, you know, music that isn't about anything, but it's just music for music's sake. And there's this whole interesting music history, you know, dilemma where, you know, once Mahler in his Ninth Symphony and also Stravinsky in 1913 with The Rite of Spring kind of broke down the barriers of traditional tonality, there was a question about who in the post-romantic movement would sort of continue the tradition of Romanticism. Obviously, Schoenberg had his you know, 12-tone method, but in the tonal area, and this is a little bit before Schoenberg, but there was this big argument about Brahms versus Wagner, right? And Wagner was extremely programmatic and had this idea of Gesamtkunstwerk, which is a German word meaning total work of art, where the music and he combined all art forms, right? You know, dance, choreography, music, stories about ancient gods and goddesses, philosophy. So basically everything combines together, whereas Brahms was very much a composer of absolute music. I mean, Brahms, to my knowledge, I don't know, I'm sure he has some programmatic music, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any of Brahms' programmaticism. He mostly just wrote symphonies and symphonias and lots of chamber music and sonatas and, you know, just music for music's sake. And some people think programmatic music is more accessible than absolute music, but sometimes people think that well, you know what? I'll make a video about this and I'll rant about programmatic music versus absolute music. So we'll save that for another time. But in any case, what was the point that I was trying to make here? I don't even remember. So we'll call that an unsuccessful rabbit trail. But in any case, let's hear this. I'll probably remember what I was going to say later. That's actually really nice. I think that's very nice. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to change it to be just double P. I think that'll be helpful. Notice how I have the tuba on the lower note because I want that warmth. I want that sine wave. And I think I might go a little bit fancier and sort of splay it downward, but It also might be a case, because if you guys remember from some previous episodes, I didn't like the gong. I thought the gong was kind of awkward, but this might be a case where the gong might work with the brass chords, because maybe the brass chords helps the gong not sound awkward as a sort of loner by itself. So I might try gong or suspended cymbal just to see how that's going to sound. Yeah, I think another issue too is that I think the melody actually might be too loud. Or you know what we could do? We could have them kind of pop up to mezzo forte, and then we could have them drop back down to piano. So, you know, right? So it's sort of like they're playing, it's good voice leading for the individual players, but this introduction is a kind of different thing from the accompanimental, harmonically supportive figuration. So I could see that working out nicely. So let's try that, and then I might try and add the tam-tam. Try tying it over. We'll do the same thing with this. Because we don't even need to articulate on the downbeat, because we don't later, because the melody's in the downbeat. Let's try that. I like that. I like that. All right, so let's try this tam-tam here. So we also could create a splash point. Where's that keypad? Here it is. I need to make sure and keep saving this. Piano's probably not enough. I might have to start it back a little bit. This is kind of cheating. You really wouldn't do this in real life. At the peak of the dynamic moment, as long as it's mezzo forte or above, the player would, having an intuitive understanding of, as a good percussionist would, of where the splash point is of each and every individual suspended cymbal and tam-tam that they're playing, would intuitively, do that. The only reason I'm doing this is just for no performer playback. So I'll try and differentiate between when I'm notating something just for the playback and when I'm notating something as if it were to be performed by live players. Most of the case, they're both the same with no performer, and I sort of judge no performer and most sound sets on their. If you need to adjust your notation to make it sound like it would be played in real life, and if you need to have a separate playback file, then that's an issue with the sound set. There isn't a perfect sound set at this point in time. But to me, the day that you don't have to make a separate playback file for no performer, is the day that no performer is at its peak capability. I actually like that. I like that quite a bit. Let's try moving it over just a hair. Sorry. It's a little annoying. Every time I select it, it plays back. Perfect. I may think differently later, but I like that. I think that's satisfying to me now. You may notice that I'm going through things a little bit more slowly in this video than I normally do with my other videos. And part of that is just because as I get older, I like to spend more time. Because, just because you can write something that sounds fine in 2 minutes, and if you need to, reach a deadline, then, you have to kind of get the work done as good as you can within the time frame. But for this project, I don't have that tight of a deadline, and I have some free time. And so for me, rather than just like still finishing it up quickly and then using the extra time to do something else. I might as well, you know, put the amount of time in this that I would put into a concert piece, because I do spend a lot more music on my I spend a lot more time on my concert music than I do on my game music, for better or worse. Part of that is because the concert music tends to be more subtle and complex, and part of that is also that there's a kind of baggage. I don't like to, you know, give in to everyone's expectations of me, but at the same time, there are like two schools of thought. One is I give the audience what they want all the time, and I'm a people pleaser. The other end of the spectrum is I only ever write what interests me intellectually and emotionally, and I don't give a crap whether or not other people like it or not. And you know, for better or worse, media music tends to go over here, and concert music tends to go over here. But that's obviously a generalization, and I think somewhere in the middle is a good spot. Not that everything has to involve compromise, because there are some cases where clearly one is better than the other, or slightly to the right or slightly to the left is better. But what I like to do is make sure that my aesthetic tastes are in line with my audience, and to the degree that that is the case, I can then safely use my audience's feedback about my music as valuable, because sometimes your audience can help you out. Sometimes they can tell you things about your music that you didn't notice, because as a composer you get so stuck in the little details that your audience can often give you a big picture. But you know, if you write something that's dissonant and an audience member doesn't like it because it's too subtle, it's too dissonant, or it sounds obtuse or esoteric to them, then maybe you don't have to pay attention to their feedback, simply because they're looking to get out of the music something different than you intended to give them by writing it. So something to consider. So again, it's not, to me, it's not about like I'm going to listen to everyone's opinion or I'm not going to listen to anyone's opinion. It's I'm going to listen to people's opinion and internalize it if their aesthetic sensibilities are in line with my own. Anyway, I digress. So let's try and get this. And I might enrich in it with. I gotta remember what my harmony was. I didn't write these chords down. Oh yeah, right. It's just D major going to F sharp minor 7. And then this, whatever the hell that is. Oops. Actually, I'm going to go up to A, and the reason why is because the horns are sitting on that F sharp, and so if we have a D major 7 chord, D, F sharp, and A is perfectly complementary to that F sharp. I often like to do that too. Not that it's a rule that you should follow at all costs, because sometimes the linear is more important than the vertical, but to the extent that you can make a linear line that sounds good as a kind of, it sounds good as a melody on its own, but it also doesn't sort of redundantly harp on notes that are already being, you know, presented in the melody. I think it's a good thing, generally speaking. And then here the melody goes G sharp A, and so I can stick to F sharp here, right? Because it's complementary. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna actually select this and the melody, and I think I'm not on transposing score, yeah. And I'm gonna carefully work this out. So that's a tritone that resolves properly. Parallel thirds, perfectly nice. Okay. So again, I'm just making sure that the intervals and the harmony are both satisfied. So it's a combination of quasi following the rules of counterpoint with also thinking about the fact that this isn't naked counterpoint. It's not just like, if you're going to write an invention or a piece of music or even a section in a piece of music where there are literally only two parts, then you have to be very, very clear about implying harmony with only those two voices. But here, we don't have to worry about that as much because the trombones have the harmony in the background. And so I'm just, I'm trying to make them complementary, but if I miss a note of the harmony every now and then, it's not a big deal. I'm more concerned with making sure that the intervals are consonant against one another and dissonances resolve properly. And by the way, you might have noticed that I took off my old Counterpoint series. It's because I didn't like it and because I made that video before I had taken 2 Counterpoint classes at college. And there were some good points. I don't think there was anything that I said that was blatantly wrong, but there were a lot of subtleties that I didn't understand. Anyway, that's a video series that I'm going to create new soon. But if you want to check out Counterpoint in the meantime, I would highly recommend you check out Alan Belkin's series. He has a lot of good points to make. There are some, I don't have any fundamental disagreements with him, but there are some aesthetic differences in the way that him and I go about writing music. And philosophical differences. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, even when I create my Counterpoint series, I feel like I would still recommend people to watch both mine and his because they give you different points of view. But anyway, I'm going to create a new Counterpoint series. That's one of the things on my list. So stay tuned for that. And let me know, for those of you that watch my videos. By the way, I never tell anyone to subscribe. So if you're not subscribe, because I'm not the type, I hate being subscribe to me, like my videos, because I deserve to be liked. It's you don't have to subscribe, no one's forcing you. But I was just looking at my YouTube analytics, and only 60% of the people who watch my videos regularly are subscribed. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe, because I'll be making lots of new music, new music tutorials soon. But in any case, let me know, would you want me to put out more content that's more casual? Or do you want me to put out a small amount of content per month that is very, very highly edited? It's just, you got to pick one or the other. So I'm happy to do either, but I just don't know. I get the sense that the highly edited videos do better, but I also don't want to, I hate it when there are 15 billion videos that I want to make. But I just don't have the time to make them as quickly as I want to make them because it takes so much freaking time to edit. Or if any of you enjoy video editing and want to help me edit my videos for some compensation, let me know, because that actually might be we could even barter video editing for lessons. But anyway, so let's check out what I just wrote here. Okay, so I like this, but then this, once we get into this craziness here, it's a little bit too... I think I'm going to turn into... I know this is octaves here, but I'm doing it purposefully. They're So that makes a nice line, and essentially, if one line turns into something that then creates a different harmony, which works with that, you know, like for example, I can use E as a pivot to get to E major, but then if I have a C as a part of the harmony, well, C can't go to E major, so is the C going to go down to B? But then the C kind of rings in, and then you have this cognitive dissonance with two different pitch collections. So to me, the easiest way to do that is just to have everyone subsumed together into the note that is the pivot note, and then it can split out into different harmonies. So it's sort of like a bridge. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but... Do you hear how it drops out vibrato? I think it's a note performer thing. Yeah, there's like no vibrato on those two notes. Not that you could add a lot of vibrato for quick notes like that, but that's a little odd. I also feel like this is too obtrusive. I think I'll do this because it makes a sixth. And then this B. Sorry, this A going to B, it gives a nice compound melody kind of contour. So, you know. Okay, I like that, at least in isolation. So let's check this out. Okay, and it seems like that viola pops out, but it's not, because remember, we're just listening to one horn. There's going to be four in the final thing. Gotta keep hitting that save button. Okay. Yeah, so I actually think I'm going to drop this out. Or we could try this. We could try that. Yeah, it's too much. I think we'll just drop it out. I get the sense that I want to keep it going. Yeah, so in context, I get the sense that I want to just keep this going the whole time. I don't think it's too distracting because the timbres, first off, the articulation is so different. You know, we're dealing with string tremolo. Well, we're dealing with tremolo as opposed to legato articulatively, and then timbrally, a viola section as opposed to horns are so different that I don't think it'll be distracting. Again, it's one of those cases where, like, my rule of thumb is to do A, and I try that, and most of the time it works, but if it doesn't, I don't dogmatically stick to my rule of thumb. I always use my intuition and aesthetics. You don't ever want your music to sound, like, rule-based or academic. Alright, so we'll try this, and if we like this, we'll call it an episode for today, and I'll make a bunch more today. I think there's something else that needs to happen on this downbeat to make that work. But anyway, we'll call that an episode for today. And I'm going to record a bunch more today since I'm in an energetic mood. And so I will see you very soon in the next episode.